You've felt it before. That moment, right before you have to speak in front of a crowd, your heart starts hammering, your mouth goes dry, your stomach tightens like someone twisted a cloth. Or when you get terrible news and there's a weight, an actual physical heaviness that settles in the middle of your chest. And you stand there thinking, why does this feel so real? Here's the thing, it is real. For centuries, Western science kept emotions in one box and the physical body in another. Feelings were for therapists, bodies were for doctors, and never the two shall meet. But in the last 3 decades, neuroscience and medicine have quietly demolished that wall. And what researchers found on the other side is stunning. Your emotions don't just influence your body, they restructure it. They reshape your immune system, rewire your nervous system, alter your hormone levels, change the way your cells communicate, and, Tandinesh, in extreme cases, can even stop your heart. Today, we're going inside that process. No metaphors, no vague wellness language. We're talking about the actual biological mechanisms by which your emotional life becomes your physical life. Stay with me. This one will change the way you understand your own body. Segment 1, the brain-body loop. Let's start with the architecture. Most of us think of the brain as the commander, sitting up top, sending signals downward, running the show, but that's only half the picture. The relationship between your brain and your body is a loop, not a one-way street. And that loop is what makes emotions so physically powerful. Here's how it works. Deep inside your brain sits a small almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. Neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux at NYU has spent decades studying this region. And what he's found is that the amygdala is essentially your brain's threat detection system. The moment you perceive something emotionally significant, danger, rejection, grief, even intense excitement, the amygdala fires. Fast, before your conscious mind has even processed what's happening. The amygdala has already sent signals downward to begin changing your body. Those signals travel through 2 main highways. First, the autonomic nervous system, which controls your heart rate, breathing, and digestion. Second, the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which governs your hormonal response. When the amygdala activates the HPA axis, your hypothalamus signals your pituitary gland, which then tells your adrenal glands to release cortisol and adrenaline into your bloodstream. And now your body is physically different. Your heart rate jumps. Blood is rerouted away from your digestive organs and toward your large muscle groups. Your pupils dilate. Your immune system shifts its priorities. Your perception of pain changes, all from a feeling. But here's the part most people miss. Your body then sends signals back to the brain. The philosopher William James argued in the 1880s that we don't tremble because we're afraid, we feel afraid because we tremble. Modern neuroscience has validated a version of this. Psychologist Lisa Feldman Barrett at Northeastern University has demonstrated through her work on constructed emotion that your brain is constantly reading your body's internal state, your heartbeat, your breathing, your muscle tension, and using that data to construct what you experience as an emotion. The loop runs in both directions. Your feelings create physical sensations, and your physical sensations intensify or even generate your feelings. This is not philosophy, this is physiology. Segment 2, stress and the immune system. Now let's talk about what happens when that system gets pushed too hard, too often. Psychoneuroimmunology, a field that studies the relationship between psychological states and immune function, has produced some of the most striking findings in modern medicine. And the central finding is this: chronic emotional stress physically degrades your immune system. Sheldon Cohen, a psychologist at Carnegie Mellon University, ran a landmark study in which he actually administered cold viruses to volunteers and then monitored who got sick. What he found was that people who had experienced prolonged psychological stress were significantly more likely to develop a full cold. Not because they were exposed to more germs, but because their immune systems were less capable of fighting back. Why? Because of cortisol. In short bursts, Cortisol is your friend. It sharpens focus, reduces inflammation, mobilizes energy. But when stress becomes chronic, when the threat never goes away, whether it's a bad marriage, a hostile workplace, financial terror, unresolved grief, cortisol levels stay elevated for days, weeks, months. And at chronically high levels, cortisol begins to suppress immune function. It reduces the production of lymphocytes, the white blood cells that form your primary defense against pathogens. It impairs the communication between immune cells. It even shortens telomeres, the protective caps on your chromosomes that are strongly associated with cellular aging and longevity. Psychologist Alyssa Appel at UCSF, who has done some of the most important research on telomeres and stress, has shown that people with higher perceived psychological stress have measurably shorter telomeres. In practical terms, chronic emotional suffering accelerates biological aging at the cellular level. And there's something even darker on the other side of this coin. When the immune system is chronically activated by emotional distress, it can begin producing inflammatory molecules called cytokines, even in the absence of any actual infection. That systemic inflammation is now linked to depression, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and certain cancers. Your emotions are not separate from your health. In many cases, they are your health. Segment 3, the heart and emotions. If you want the most dramatic example of emotions physically changing the body, look at the heart. In 1990, cardiologists at Johns Hopkins Hospital began documenting a condition that had no clear physical cause. Patients would arrive, almost always following a sudden emotional shock, with chest pain, shortness of breath, and EKG readings that looked identical to a massive heart attack. But when doctors performed imaging, the coronary arteries were completely clear. No blockage. What they found instead was that a section of the left ventricle had ballooned outward and stopped pumping properly. They named it Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. In Japan, where it was first studied, they called it broken heart syndrome because the most common trigger was bereavement. A spouse dies suddenly. Hours later, the surviving partner is in cardiac arrest. The mechanism? A massive surge of catecholamines, adrenaline, and related stress hormones literally stuns the heart muscle. The emotional shock produces a hormonal flood so powerful that it physically incapacitates a section of the cardiac wall. People have died from broken hearts, not metaphorically, literally. But the heart-emotion connection runs in both directions, and there's a more hopeful story here too. Psychologist Barbara Fredrickson at the University of North Carolina, one of the leading researchers in positive emotion science, has documented what she calls the broaden and build effect. Positive emotions like joy, love, and gratitude don't just feel good. They produce measurable changes in cardiovascular function. Her research, along with work from the HeartMath Institute, has shown that sustained positive emotional states produce what's called heart rate variability coherence, a smooth, ordered pattern in the rhythm of your heartbeat associated with lower cardiovascular risk, better immune function, and improved cognitive performance. Your heart literally beats differently depending on what you feel. Segment 4. The gut and the second brain. Here's one most people haven't heard. Your gut has a nervous system, a real one. The enteric nervous system contains approximately 100 million neurons, more than your spinal cord, lining the entire gastrointestinal tract from your esophagus to your colon. Neurogastroenterologist Michael Gershon at Columbia University, who literally wrote the book on this called The Second Brain, argues that this system operates with a high degree of independence and sophistication, and it is in constant bidirectional communication with your brain via the vagus nerve, one of the longest nerves in the body, running from your brainstem all the way down through your chest and into your abdomen. When you're anxious, your gut knows. The enteric nervous system responds to emotional signals by altering motility, the contractions that move food through your digestive tract. Anxiety speeds things up, which is why stress can trigger diarrhea. Grief and depression often slow them down, which is one physiological reason why people experiencing severe depression frequently deal with constipation and abdominal discomfort. But it goes deeper. Your gut microbiome, the trillion-plus bacteria living in your intestines, is now understood to produce and regulate a significant portion of your body's neurotransmitters. Approximately 90% of your body's serotonin is manufactured in the gut, not the brain. And research published in journals like Nature Microbiology and Cell suggests that the emotional state of the host, you, influences the composition of that microbial community, and vice versa. Chronic emotional distress can literally alter which bacteria dominate your gut, which alters your serotonin production, which affects your mood, which worsens your distress. It is a feedback loop that connects your feelings to your intestinal bacteria and back again. When you say something makes you sick, you may be describing a biological process with uncomfortable accuracy. Segment 5, the body keeps the score. This brings us to what may be the most important idea in this entire video. Trauma researcher Bessel van der Kolk, whose work we've touched on before, spent decades treating veterans, abuse survivors, and disaster victims. And across thousands of patients and years of research, he arrived at a conclusion that has since become foundational to trauma medicine. The body literally stores unprocessed emotion. Not metaphorically, physiologically. When a person experiences overwhelming emotional trauma, especially when they are unable to express or process it at the time, the nervous system encodes the experience not just as a memory, but as a body state. The muscles brace, the breathing shallows, the posture collapses. Specific body regions develop chronic tension or numbness, and that physical pattern persists, sometimes for decades, long after the event that caused it is over. Van der Kolk and his colleagues have used neuroimaging to watch what happens in the brains of trauma survivors when they recall their experiences. The Broca's area, the region associated with language and narration, goes quiet. Trauma isn't processed as a story you can tell. It's processed as a physical alarm your body continues to sound. This is why therapies that work only with words, just talking about what happened, often have limited impact on trauma. Because the trauma isn't living in the story, it's living in the body. It's also why somatic therapies, approaches that work directly with the body through movement, breath work, sensation tracking, and physical release, can reach places that talk therapy alone cannot. Your posture is not just biomechanics. Your chronic tension is not just a tight muscle. In many cases, these are emotions that never got to complete their cycle. Your body, quite literally, is holding your history. Segment 6. What you can actually do. So none of this is meant to be frightening. It's meant to be clarifying. Because if emotions can degrade the body, they can also heal it. The same bidirectional loop that allows fear to accelerate your heart rate allows deep, slow breathing to calm your amygdala. Psychologist James Gross at Stanford, one of the leading researchers in emotion regulation, has demonstrated that how you relate to your emotions, not just what you feel, but how you process it, has measurable physiological consequences. Suppression, pushing emotions down, performing okayness when you're not okay, is associated with higher cardiovascular reactivity, elevated cortisol, and suppressed immune function. You feel less, but your body pays more. Cognitive reappraisal, actively reconsidering the meaning of an experience, actually changes the neural and physiological response. It reduces amygdala activation. It lowers cortisol. It keeps the prefrontal cortex engaged. And physical practices close the loop from the bottom up. Slow diaphragmatic breathing activates the vagus nerve and shifts the body from sympathetic dominance, the stress state, toward parasympathetic activity, the restoration state. Movement and exercise metabolize the stress hormones that anxiety has pumped into your bloodstream. Body-based awareness practices, learning to notice and name physical sensations without immediately reacting, rebuild the connection between your body and your conscious mind that chronic stress slowly erodes. Barbara Fredrickson's research suggests that even brief, regular experiences of positive emotion, not forced positivity, but genuine moments of connection, beauty, or play, gradually reshape the physiological baseline. Over time, They broaden your autonomic flexibility and literally build a more resilient body. You are not helpless inside this system. You are a participant in it. Here's what I want you to leave with today. The next time your chest tightens under stress, or your stomach drops when something frightens you, or your shoulders crawl up toward your ears in a difficult conversation, those aren't inconveniences. Those are data. Your body is speaking a language that science is only now beginning to fully translate. The wall between mind and body was never real. It was always one system, one continuous loop, constantly talking to itself. Understanding that loop and learning to work with it rather than against it might be the most important thing you ever do for your health. Don't forget subscribe, like the video, and turn on notifications.